Hello, my name is Julia and welcome back to my channel, A Painter's Vlog. Today I'm going to be sharing ghost stories. And I just want to preface by saying one of these stories happened to me last night in the very room that I'm sitting, which, yeah, so grab a snack and let's jump in. Alright guys, so enough of the spooky lighting. I've got my incense burning. I feel like I'm in a safe place. I meditated and I'm feeling good. But I wanted to jump on because today is Devil's Night and it's also a full moon, and I am also in a house that was built in the 1850s in a small hamlet called Burlingham that has had quite a bit of murderous activity in the past couple centuries or so. So I first want to start by saying I haven't really been haunted often, and I haven't really had too many occurrences. I do believe in energies from another world, another time. I'm not sure how to explain it, but I have always had an interest in the occult ever since I was a young girl. And I remember playing Ouija board with my friend Angie, which was also a very strange experience. But today I wanted to share something that happened to me last night. So just to kind of preface, the night before, we had a little bit of red wine and we were having a great time, and I was hanging out with my boyfriend's parents. That's where I'm staying right now, here in Burlingham, in their little house. And we were playing games and everyone was in really good spirits. Also to let you know, I didn't overdrink, I wasn't on any other drugs, and everyone was in great spirits. So we sat in the living room talking till about 10 o'clock at night, and Blair's mom mentioned that there used to be a serial killer in this area, and it was a woman, and she had killed many people, of course, being a serial killer. And I was like, what? And she walks over to the bookshelf, pulls a book off, and gives it to me. And I, start leafing through it. I love a good ghost story. And I shared with her that a couple weeks ago I was laying in bed and someone tapped my back 5 times really hard. At that time, I wasn't scared at all. I didn't feel a dark presence. I didn't feel threatened in any way, so I just went back to sleep. So I shared that with her at that time. So I go to sleep probably around, I would say 11:30 midnight. And what happened after that was eerie and terrifying and very unsettling. It's something that I've never experienced in my life. And, I think that I've cleared the energy enough where I can share this story right now. I woke up and in my hands was a bundle of photographs of my grandmother. I had had the photographs on the nightstand in a plastic bag, and they were photographs that I pulled out recently because I was sharing some of my heritage and history with Blair's family and recreating some of my grandmother's recipes, and I had actually taken them down from the shelf up there to put them back in storage. So anyway, I had this bag of photos sitting on the nightstand, and I apparently, in my deepest subconscious or whatever it was, I opened the sealed ziplock bag, took out a grouping of photos, tore them in half, took out another grouping of photos, tore them in half, and basically what I was doing without consciousness at all was I was going through this entire bag of photographs of my grandmother and ruining them, tearing them apart, ripping them. And I took, I believe the last one I had was a photograph of her, which I ripped twice in half. I woke up or came to consciousness with the photos in my hand mid-tear. And I was like, what the hell am I doing? And there was photograph shards and pieces everywhere on the bed. I looked over, Blair's just sleeping with his back turned to me, and it was so weird. I can't describe the feeling. I've never had issues with sleepwalking. I've never had issues with night terrors or sleep paralysis. I had one minor issue with sleep paralysis for 5 minutes, probably 15 years ago. So this is not a common occurrence. And on top of that, I'm a very, very light sleeper. So I'll wake up at the drop of the hat. If Blair gets up or he even turns over in his sleep, I'll wake up. So for me to, have any kind of wherewithal or like body energy to open a sealed Ziploc bag, pull out photographs that I would never, ever, 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 ever do this to, and continue to methodically tear them apart is so out of character, so strange, so unusual that the only word that comes to mind is possession and the feeling of being possessed. Okay, so I'm about to recreate this scene for you just so you can see exactly how it happened, but I wanted to share with you that I had actually brought that book about the serial killer upstairs with me last night, and I was doing some Google research before bed about this woman, and this is the name of the book. So this was written by a local author, and this woman emigrated here from Ireland, and she lived in this little hamlet. Now, the hamlet of Burlingham is really only about 2 or 3 square miles, so it's really, really small. A lot of people don't even know about it. So the fact that she lived right in this area, it was just like so eerie. So here you can see, and someone actually brought up the fact that she was dubbed the Catskill Ripper, and these photos were ripped up, which is, I don't know, it's kind of a stretch, but it's really weird. So I'm gonna go ahead and demonstrate exactly what happened and kind of do a little recreation of the scene for you. So this is where I usually sleep, on this side, over here closer to the light, and then Blair sleeps over here. And so he had his face toward the wall, sleeping in the bed. And I had the book over here on the nightstand, right here, because I was reading it before I went to bed. And this package of photos was just sitting, I don't know, right back here. I honestly had brought the photos from right up here, just this little ledge, like 2 days ago. So I wasn't even thinking about the photos. They were just kind of there. So why they would even be in my subconscious, why I would even have this weird impetus to tear them up is just, like I said, it's so not me, and it's like beyond anything that I would ever, ever, ever do. These photos to me are like gold, and they just mean so much to me. So anyway, so I'm laying here and I was on my back. This is how I woke up. And I had a grouping of photos in my hand. So just like this. And I was just in the process of tearing them open, or tearing them apart like this. And there were just like shards of photos just all over on the floor, and I was like, what the hell? I mean, you're waking up and you're in a scene of shock. You're just like, so here's the shards of the photos. As I said, these are some of my most prized possessions. My aunt let me have these when I did a big project about my grandma's life, and I was painting about her life. But these are the photos here. 2 of the groupings of photos I tore all at the same time, like I said, and then one of the photos was of her, and I'll go ahead and insert those pictures there. And one of the photos, my grandfather's head was torn out. There was another photo of my grandfather on the floor, someone who I've never met. And kind of a little background on this serial killer, she was married so many times. Like, she got married young. Even by 21 years old, she was married 5 times. Her first husband, a lot of these like were suspected murders, but she was never able to be convicted on some of those counts. Now, what she was able to be convicted about was her, I don't know, 7th or 8th husband being buried under the kitchen floor in their house in Burlingham, and 2 bodies found in the barn who were women, and they were bound and wrapped very tightly and shot with a gun. So this woman was very callous, very cold, very calculated, but she would also feign that she was insane. And her final murder was committed when she was in the prison or the rehabilitation. This woman befriended her and they got really, really close. And the woman would often let her out of her restraints because she felt really comfortable around her. And it was said that Lizzie developed these romantic feelings for this woman. And then, you know, a couple years pass. They have this really nice relationship. This woman's like, oh, I feel comfortable around Lizzie for some reason. But anyway, so one day she goes in there and she's gonna break it to her that she is leaving because she's getting married, and she's really happy. She's over the moon. She's about to move away and she's gonna get married. And Lizzie's like, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't try that. And she's like, oh, Lizzie, no. And so anyway, she comes in a few days later, and Lizzie had gotten the scissors, I don't know, from the guard or the woman or whatever somehow, locks her in a room and stabs her 200 times, and then afterward just giggled about it. So I don't know if it has anything to do with that spirit's energy. I don't know, because like I said, I was tapped on the back like a few weeks ago, but it didn't feel threatening in any way. I've never experienced any negative energy in this house. Blair's parents actually found a shoe in the wall of the house, I believe it was. And one was a baby shoe, and then I think the other was an adult shoe. And they do still have those shoes, but shoes were often placed in houses to be a talisman of protection. So I just don't think that has anything to do with it. I do feel like I was possessed by something, and I don't know what that was, but it was, to me, it definitely felt like a very malicious energy, because it was just done out of spite. There's nothing good that can come of ruining these photos of my grandmother. You know, I'm just thankful that nothing worse happened, and that I didn't actually get through the entire bag of photos, and that I didn't tear apart this actual news article about my grandmother, because I would just be heartbroken. So what I'm gonna do in retaliation to this spirit is, first, I burned incense and I've invited the spirit to leave, and I let her know that I'm stronger than she is and I have a protective energy about me. And then the second thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna glue these photographs back together and just let her know, like, this isn't gonna break me down. So I would like to share another story. This story happened at Bromley Mansion. So God, what year was that? In 2016, I moved to a mansion in Ditmas Park, Brooklyn, and the mansion was called Bromley Mansion. It was an old Victorian house that used to be a music school run by Faye and Buster Bromley. Now, this house was purportedly haunted. I'd heard many stories even entering into the house. This house was really familiar to me because anytime I came to New York, I would sleep on my friend's couch in the house, in the basement. I was really comfortable there, and I had a few experiences. Like, for instance, one night I was at my easel, and you know how when someone flips on the flashlight on their iPhone and come up behind you or something, or just uses the light? I had just moved all my paintings in and I was painting, and there was someone who came up behind me with the light, and I turned around and screamed because no one was there. Now that could be written off to, you know, perhaps seeing something out of the corner of my eye or maybe imagining something, but what happened to my boyfriend Blair is way far less explainable, and the story gets scarier as we learned more. And this is where the exact place where Blair was haunted, right over here on the bed. So there was one night, it was about a week after he had smudged the room, and he was actually really serious about this cleansing. He had gotten a bundle of sage from his then ex-girlfriend, and he decided to do a cleansing. So he walks around to all the corners of the room and does this really ritualistic thing. And 1 week later, he's laying in bed. It was about 2 or 3 in the morning, and he awoke to his bed vibrating violently. And I don't just mean for a couple seconds, you know, that moment between you're wavering from unconscious to conscious. Sometimes you can feel things or see things. Well, he sat there and watched the bed shake for 45 seconds. He recoiled his legs toward him and watched the bed shake. After that, shortly thereafter, there was a loud slam. The front door slammed, and he pretty much lay in bed for 2 hours scared shitless. So that, he tried to think of any plausible explanation. Was there earthquake activity, which is very rare, but it could happen in New York, but no, there wasn't. There's no weird heater in the basement that can rumble. You know, sometimes old houses have like weird things like that. There was really no explanation, and he was always the type of person that was like, bring it on, I want to see a spirit, I want to see a ghost. And after that experience, he never wanted to experience something like that again, because it was absolutely terrifying, unexplainable, and frightening. So the weirdest part comes in when, fast forward to about 2 years later. We're well into our relationship. I know about this story and everything. But anyway, these 2 random guys are walking past Bromley Mansion, and a couple of my roommates were on the porch, And the guys are like, hey, oh my gosh, we know this house. We're really familiar with this house. So my roommates like end up inviting the guy in, and they're just like sharing stories in the living room. And I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go out and see who this character is. So I'm talking with the guy, and he's just like, yeah, my wife, she used to live up on the second floor of this house. And I want to tell you something strange. There was one night where she woke up in the middle of the night and her bed was shaking violently. And even recounting this story and sharing it with so many of you gives me chills, because I had not told him that this had happened to Blair. And yeah, he said it was just so spooky. I was just like, hell no. I was like, the same thing happened to Blair. But she was living on the second floor and we were living on the first floor. So I don't know. I mean, the bottom line is, I feel like, and we have to understand that we don't know what happens when we pass away. It is just hypothesis. It's a mystery. What happens to our energy? Like, yes, our body can wilt, but energy cannot be created nor destroyed, right? So whatever happens to your energy continues into the world. I also have a theory about ghosts. I feel like, especially when something tragic occurs, where like a spirit or something will linger in a certain space, I feel like just scientifically, down to the molecular level, if something extreme happens, say a murder, which is like the worst thing that could happen, in that moment, the energies of someone's particular body are vibrating at a very high frenetic speed, right? Because you have adrenaline going and you're really excited and you're freaked out and you're being murdered. And, you know, so I feel like those energies, those molecules, those very, very subatomic, like just tiny molecules can stay in that space and time and reconvene at later times, almost forming a mirage of a ghost or something that can actually physically move objects or something that can actually be seen. I've heard this theory a couple times, and I'm sure like thousands of people have thought about this theory, but I mean, for me, that just makes sense because it actually involves science. Like, there's the vibrating of the molecules in your body, the excitement, things that are happening. Yeah. Aside from that, I've had a couple weird experiences in my life. Like I mentioned earlier, there was one with a Ouija board when I was younger. My friend Angie and I decided that we were going to take out a Ouija board and try to contact a spirit. She had seen several spirits in her house. One was a little boy on top of the steps, and it freaked her out all the time. But we brought out this Ouija board, and the one thing that remains vivid in my mind was that we asked the spirit, "Where are you?" And the spirit said, "I am everywhere, but not heaven or hell." I would never say that. I never had that thought in my life, and Angie would never say that. And literally 1 year ago, I checked with Angie. You know, I'm 38 now. This was like 20 years ago or something. I'm like, yo, were you moving the Ouija board? She's like, no. I'm like, dude, I still think about that, man. She's like, yeah, me too. There was one other incident that I had in Cambodia, and there was a childlike spirit with a malicious vibe that came behind me and tickled me on my on my sides. And I woke up, and maybe it was just that I was in a country that I'd never been in, and I was alone, and I was, you know, in a Cambodian household where there had been the death of a child, but this spirit was so malicious. It was brutally terrifying and kept me awake for hours. And my twin friends, Pani and Sopanin, wrote me a spell or like a saying on a piece of paper, and they told me to put it under my pillow, and I was never again visited by that spirit. So I don't know. I think that part of it also is just that part of the experience that I had last night also is just that the energies are aligned. It's a full moon tonight. It's Devil's Night. It's Halloween tomorrow. The election's coming up. 2020 has been a shit show. I also spent a good portion of my time this year doing yoga and meditating, and I feel like that leaves you very open and receptive, but also with that a little bit vulnerable and prone to perhaps energies that might want to enter into your body and make you tear up pictures of your grandmother. So that was just not cool. But you know what? Whoever did this Lizzie or whatever entity or whatever energy. I am strong, I am protected, I have a white aura surrounding me, and you are not welcome here. And I'm gonna tape those photographs of my grandmother together, and tonight I'm gonna have a nice peaceful sleep. I just really wanted to share these experiences with you guys and let you know my thoughts on energy and spirits and maybe what happens after we pass away. And I'm just hoping that what I've done here expels whatever spirit found its way into me. I just don't feel like in my darkest recesses of my mind and spirit that, or my mind and body, that I would ever create such a heinous act to tear apart precious pictures of my grandmother. It shocked me, and Blair was shocked, and I think that this happened for a reason. I'm not gonna say, oh, I wish it didn't happen, or, you know, I'm not that kind of person, but I just wanted to share it with you, see what you guys thought, and if you guys have any stories of your own, please share below. And also, if you have any ideas of how to protect yourselves from these types of entities, then I'm also really keen on hearing that. So thanks again for letting me share, and back to your regular scheduled channel. I'll see you later, guys, and happy Halloween.